High school sports, we've got it covered. Overtime starts now.
Hey, we're back. The 2023 season of Overtime does kick off right now. I'm Scott Leber.
And I'm Regan Holgate. We know you are as excited about this season as we are. Our mission here is to serve all of you with anything and everything high school football related.
And that's why we'll bring you the highlights, interviews, and feature stories on some of the athletes and coaches. And the man, Tim Bailey, is going to be joining us once again with his weekly thoughts on the Nick 10.
We're so excited to be back with Tim. We've missed our guy. Next week the games begin, and this show will set the table for that. We'll introduce you to this year's teams and some of the key players. We start tonight by focusing on the Nick 10.
What a race the Nick 10 teams gave us last season. Do you remember how tight it was? The top 5 teams finished within 2 games of each other. The race literally came down to the final week. Boylan won it with an 8-1 record. Belvidere North, Guilford, and Hononegah tied for second and 7-2. Harlem was right there at 6-3, and I will not be surprised if we see a similar race this season. So let's turn the page to a new season and see what these teams are going to put on the field this year.
Let's get this party started with the Auburn Knights. Willie Tolan's guys won 3 games last season. They could be one of the most improved teams in the conference this season. They have big Patrick DuBose Jr. back at running back. We saw him plow over a lot of defenders last season. He was a fun one to watch. The Knights returned their quarterback Anthony Purifoy. He passed for more than 1,300 yards.
I saw him in practice last week. He was throwing some dimes on the out routes like that one. As usual, the Knights also have some speedsters at receiver. There's Terry Horton, Leonard Spates, and several others. And the Knights added 3 big linemen who transferred over from East.
They also added a transfer from Rockford Lutheran, A.J. Moore. He'll give the Knights another dynamic player at running back.
He got speed, he got good footwork, he got a lot of stuff, strength.
I know he did really good things for Lutheran, but I feel like he'll do way better things at Auburn. He gelled with the team as soon as he got here.
At Belvidere, the Bucks have been working hard. They have 10 returning starters, including Jason Dean. He'll be their biggest playmaker at wide receiver and in the slot. The last 7 years, the Bucks have won a total of only 9 games.
Last season, they didn't win any. The first step they need to take is to simply become competitive again, stay in games, then eventually those wins will come.
As head coach Tony Ambrosio told me, the motivation for his guys this season is to become that group that helps get Belvidere's football program back on the map.
They're here trying to, put their best foot forward, and they understand that, we're here building the program up, and they're going to be part of it. This is going to be their legacy.
On the north side of Belvidere, it's a different story. The Blue Thunder are more than competitive. They're consistently in the hunt for Nick 10 championships. Last season, they were in the driver's seat until they dropped their final 2 games to Harlem and Guilford and settled for a tie for second place.
They will be heard from again this year. They're adding players from a sophomore team that went 8-1 last season. Those guys joined some really good returning varsity players, most notably speedsters Joseph Brown and Nico Bertolino.
They are big-time players on offense and defense. North also has quarterback Maddox Gillenswan returning. Trent Dinsmore could also be an impact player in the offensive backfield, and sophomore Eric Roman. They're expecting him to be a big-time player at linebacker.
With that type of talent, there can only be one goal: win a conference championship.
Team goals, I want to win conference and win a couple playoff games.
I want to get out of the first round of the playoffs at least, so I'd say at least win 2 or more playoff wins.
At Boylan, the goal is always to win the Nick 10 championship. The Titans did just that last season. They won that crazy race on the final night. The Titans returned 4 starters on both sides of the football.
One of them happens to be the conference's offensive MVP from last season, Connor Dennis. He led the conference in passing yards and set some school records. This will be his 3rd year as QB1 at Boylan, but he won't have to carry the load by himself. He'll get plenty of help from receivers Philip Dixon, Santana English, and Ryan Stark. And the Titans have 2 lead running backs in Donovan Hanson and Rasheed Johnson. All Johnson did last season was average 10.9 yards per carry.
Yeah, he's a good one. The East Arabs were hit by injuries last season and things got away from them. They won only 2 games, and over the summer they lost a bunch of key players who transferred. But they do have one very big thing going for them. They have Javius Catlin back at running back.
He's been making defenses look silly since his freshman season on varsity, and he needs just over 1,300 yards rushing this season to break the Nick 10's all-time rushing record.
It would mean everything for me if we go out with a bang, especially my senior year. Set it off to college. I would love to go out there and at least just make it to playoffs. It mean everything to me.
We are joined now by our Nick 10 analyst. He's back. It's Tim Bailey, a former Nick 10 star and now the performance manager of Mercy Health Top Performers, where he trains many of the elite athletes that we talk about on the regular. Tim, it is so good to have you back.
Good to be back, guys. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we always enjoy hearing your thoughts on what unfolds in the Nick 10 each week. So let's start now with Auburn. I believe the Knights will be the most improved team in the Nick 10 this season. Am I looking at the Knights through rose-colored glasses, or do they have some legit pieces that could really elevate them?
I mean, anytime you bring back your starting quarterback and you bring back some pieces like DeBose and some of the other players like HORTON on offense, yes, you do have a chance. And then Coach Tolan's in his second season now as head coach. He's got his feet wet. He's got his feet really underneath him now. He's been able to go in and really understand what these players need and what the program needs, and he's ready to move it forward.
Belvidere North always knocking on the door of a championship every year. They just can't quite get one. How have the coaches been able to kind of maintain that consistency, and are they still a threat this year?
Yeah, I think Belvidere North is definitely a threat this year in the conference. I mean, look what they bring back. I mean, they bring back some of the best players in the conference in Bertolino and Brown. Only thing I would like to see Belvidere do a little bit more, and I said this last year and I'll say it again, pass the ball just a little bit more. Show some love to the pass game.
Well, that brings us to Boylan, right, Regan?
Yeah, the defending conference champions. They had so many weapons last year, and of course that guy at quarterback, Connor Dennis. Is this team going to be a mirror image of what we saw last year?
I think they are. I think they have a lot of good players coming back. Johnson's coming back. Dennis is coming back. I mean, anytime you have a offense like they had last year, and this guy that we're seeing in this video right now, he's actually been the conductor, the point guard, so to speak, for the last 3 years. You got to be really sleeping well at night if you're Coach Cacciatore.
100%. All right, we've covered half of the Nick 10. We'll cover the other half with you, Tim. Just a little later, you can relax just for a few minutes, but we'll see you in a bit.
Coming up next, we're going to cover some ground in the Big Northern Conference. Will it be another tight race there?
We discussed the tight race in the Nick 10 last season, and we got the same thing in the Big Northern Conference.
Yeah, there were co-champions last year. Stillman Valley and BYRON tied for first with 8-1 records. The Cardinals won the head-to-head matchup in Week 1 in overtime. Cardinals then lost to Genoa Kingston on the final week to create the tie. GK finished in third place, Dixon in fourth. Lutheran and Bago were next with 5-4 records. All of those teams made the playoffs. And Reagan, what does Stillman Valley have coming back this season?
Well, let's start with quarterback Braden Engel. He's a dual threat QB. He's an excellent runner who runs the option well. The Cardinals graduated fullback Jory Spain, which I'm sure the rest of the Big Northern is pretty happy about. He was a load. Taking over at fullback now will be senior Braden Rogers. Isaiah Hirbie, Keaton Rahman, and lineman Malachi Bagg will be some of the Cardinals' other key players. The Cardinals are reloading after losing 20 seniors. Coach Lawler says the key this season will be the development of the guys on the lines.
Well, the big Stillman-BYRON matchup this year will not happen until the final week of the season. The Tigers have reached at least the state semifinals 6 of the last 9 years. Their expectations are high again. They have 7 starters back on offense, 8 back on defense. Caden Considine was excellent as a freshman at both fullback and linebacker. Look for more big things out of him. Kai Aiken, Ashton Henkel, Braden Knoll, and Carson Bain give the Tigers a very deep backfield. And the Tigers have some primetime players on the lines, especially all-conference defensive lineman Josh Harris. And Coach Boyer says these guys have the right attitude. Well, Reagan, I think the big story at Rockford Lutheran is the job head coach Jeff LUEDKE has done turning that program around in a short time.
Yeah, the Crusaders got back on the winning track last season in his first as head coach. They won 6 games, including a playoff game. They'll have a sophomore taking over at quarterback this season with Daniel Ballard. He has a whole lot of support around him. His brother David at receiver, along with Jack Beamer and Trayshawn Lockhart, might give the Crusaders the best group of receivers in the conference. And sophomore Gavin Sanders could be ready to explode this year at running back. Hunter Evans will be their leader on the offensive line and at linebacker. Scott, another team that could be a force in the conference this season is Oregon.
I really believe the Hawks will be the most improved team in this conference, and that'll be great to reignite the Hawks' rivalries with BYRON and Stillman Valley. They've been winning at the lower levels the last few years, Oregon has, and now they're ready to make a leap from the 2-7 season they had last year. They have 6 starters back for their spread offense, including junior quarterback Jack Washburn and junior tight end Josh Crandall. And they have 8 starters back on defense, including leading tackler Anthony Bauer at linebacker. And like LUEDKE at Lutheran, Oregon head coach Brock Kundert has changed the culture at Oregon and has these guys believing in themselves.
Now, at Winnebago, the Indians are coming off a 5-win playoff season. They'll be relying heavily on some newcomers from their junior class, like Mitchell Cunningham, who takes over at quarterback. Seniors Logan Olson and Brandon Wigan will be key returning players on both sides of the ball. And then there's this guy who might be the fastest athlete anywhere in our area, senior running back Supreme Muhammad for Bago. The key is the younger guys getting their feet under them and maturing quickly.
At North Boone, the Vikings are ready to run their spread offense again, only without Chandler Alderman. Senior Jack Christensen has moved from running back to quarterback. He has good size and strength, and as usual, the Vikings have some outstanding receivers. Chris Dutch for starters. There's also Julian Rodriguez, and now 6'4" sophomore Bradley Dahl. Dahl should also make a big impact at defensive end. And the Vikings missed the playoffs last season. They're determined to get back.
Now, the Dixon Dukes are ready to make a big push in the Big Northern after a 6-4 season last year. Their returning experience is key, and that starts with senior quarterback Tyler Shaner. He'll have weapons around him this season with his younger brother Colin at receiver and senior Aiden Wiseman at running back. Stud receiver Eli Davidson is back from an injury and will be crucial on both sides of the ball. The Dukes have made the playoffs the last 8 years, but these guys told me they're ready for more this season. Now, Genoa Kingston has been right there with Byron and Stillman Valley at the top of the Big Northern in recent years, but this could be a rebuilding season for the Cogs. They only have 4 starters returning, and they only have around 22 players on their varsity roster. Junior Nathan Kleba takes over at quarterback. Brady Brewick will be a key player at fullback and linebacker.
Rockford Christian has an even smaller roster than normal. The Royal Lions have only 15 players. The golf team has more than 20 players. So I'll say this, among the 15 kids that they do have, there's some really good ones. Sophomore QB Jaden Williams has skills, so does running back Tucker Delaney. Julius Holt right there was second team all-conference on the defensive line last year as a freshman. Obviously, the Royal Lions have to avoid injuries. A co-op or 8-man football could be in their future, but for now, they'll try to survive another season in the Big Northern. Hey, don't go away. Our tour of the NUIC is next. You're watching Overtime.
At the small school level, there's the Northwest Upstate Illini Conference, and then there's everyone else.
Yeah, and I'm going to take the NUIC over the rest of the field in the state any day, because when you talk NUIC football, you have to start in Lena. All the Lehman Panthers have done is win the last 3 state championships in Class 1A. They've won 6 state titles overall. And here's the interesting thing this year. The Panthers return only 3 starters on offense and only 1 on defense. But don't think for a second that this is a rebuilding year or that this is the year everybody gets revenge on the Panthers. They have crushed it again in the weight room the past several months, and they have maybe the best all-around player in the state in Class 1A back in Gage Dunker. You've got that coaching staff that's been together for more than 2 decades, and they do have a sizable class of 16 seniors. If there's one team that doesn't fear Lena Winslow Reagan, it's the FORRESTON Cardinals.
Yeah, that's right, Scott. There's a whole lot of respect there, but definitely no fear. The Cardinals returned 7 starters in their double wing offense and 6 on their defense from a team that reached the state semifinals last year. The Cardinals' run game will be clicking as usual with the likes of Caleb Sanders, Micah Nelson, and Owen Mulder. Now, you can bet DuPec will be right there battling with FORRESTON and Lena Winslow for the conference championship.
The Rivermen have a great program in place right now, and for the 5th straight year, they're going to have a Hoffman starting at quarterback. Junior Cooper Hoffman, he completed 69% of his passes last season for almost 1,000 yards. Now, physical running back A.G. Mulcahy, he's graduated, but senior Connor Hughes will now provide that physical running presence this year. He missed almost all of last season with an injury. The Rivermen have made the playoffs 3 straight years. They expect to be in the postseason every year now.
The EASTLAND-PEARL City WILDCATZ should be improved this season after winning only 3 games last year. Their numbers are up. They have only 6 seniors, though, but boy, do they have some speed in the offensive backfield with senior Brady Schweitzer and sophomore Draven Zier. Will Birkin is back at linebacker. He was their leading tackler last year as a freshman.
Well, Stockton's another team that could be significantly improved this season. Former assistant coach Sean Downey is now the Blackhawks head coach, and he wisely brought in new assistant coaches Randy and Riley Ashe, and they have amped up the strength and conditioning program there. As usual, the Blackhawks will be run heavy with running backs Carl Hubb and Tanner Guile. But new quarterback Colby Tucker, well, he shows a lot of promise. And Stockton has some strong young men on the lines, led by Michael Haas and Wesley Logeman.
Now, the Fulton Steamers had a great season last year. They finished second in the conference and won 9 games overall. They were bumped out of the playoffs in the quarterfinals by Lena Winslow. They graduated their QB1 in Braden Dykstra. He was one of 19 seniors they lost. So the Steamers could dip a little bit this year. 6'6" receiver Balin Damhoff will be their best player.
The Dakota Indians had a resurgence last year. They won 7 games and they won 2 playoff games. Now they'll try to keep that going. They'll try to navigate through an unexpected head coaching change. Eric Giddish is running things now as the interim head coach. TJ Silva, Jason Bowers, Noah Wenzel, and Connor Matthews will be some of Dakota's key players.
Up next, we'll finish what we started earlier with Tim Bailey. It's time for the rest of the Nick 10.
Freeport, Guilford, Harlem, Hononegah, and Jefferson all coming up. We pick up where we left off in the Nick 10 in Freeport. And Regan, you got the assignment of covering the Pretzels practice.
I did, and this feels like a make it or break it year for them. They have a group of guys who started on varsity as freshmen, and now they're seniors. So this is their window to break a long playoff drought. The Pretzels have been stuck on 3 wins the last 3 seasons. The good news for them is they have 8 starters back on each side of the ball. They have a couple of electric players in Denarius Jackson and Diedrich Macon at running back and receiver. Dawson Holland, Ali Alziers, Jermone Hall, and Sammy O'Day have lots of experience. They believe they can compete with the top teams in the conference.
You can see the encouragement in their eyes. You see the confidence in their play, and I'm just looking for good things to happen. If we can go 1-0 each week, we're good.
Now, Scott, Guilford went 1-0 7 weeks last season. They were the team that made the biggest jump in the conference.
Yeah, they snuck up on some people early and then proved to be legit championship contenders. And if not for some key injuries down the stretch, just maybe they would have won it. But now they bring back quarterback Skylar Wolf, who was the catalyst behind their improvement last season. They have some dynamic receivers back in LaDamian Hoffman and Jaden Wind. And they have some excellent linemen back led by Jason Scott and James Benson.
The big key for the Vikings is they graduated their star running back, Javon Jones. Can they replace him? They have some unproven guys that are looking to do that. Watch for the Vikings to be very physical once again this year. Now at Harlem, the Huskies didn't get a Nick 10 championship last season, but they were the last team standing at the end of the season.
They made it 3 rounds deep into the playoffs. That had never been done before by a Harlem team. This has become a football school. Harlem has put together 15 straight winning seasons. They have more than 200 kids in the program now. Coach Bob Moynihan stepped into that program with a chip on his shoulder 3 years ago, and he has raised the bar, and now he has some elite talent, an MVP candidate there, and junior running back Jamani Muhammad, and the fastest defense Harlem has probably ever had. Isaac Johnson is one of the guys on that defensive front.
I guarantee we're not going to allow the quarterback to have any time to be comfortable. We'll lead the conference in sacks, and I guarantee we'll lead the conference in TFLs. This defensive line is the fastest we've ever had. We're all averaging under a 4.9 40.
Well, Harlem's talent is impressive, but then so is the talent on that other team that begins with an H, Regan, Hononegah.
Yeah, the Indians are loaded. They have Cole Warren back at quarterback. They'll have the electric Isaiah Hui playing all over the field. They have some huge linemen, Jake Brogy, Jacob Benson, and Mike Floriance, and a smash-mouth middle linebacker in Miles Schmidt. And on top of all of that, their sophomore team went undefeated last year, so they have those guys coming in.
I think that we have a strong chance to contend for the conference championship.
I'm biased, I feel like we're the best team in the conference. It's just my confidence, my confidence in our teammates. I feel like nobody can stand a chance against us this year.
At Jefferson, the Jayhawks have another new head coach, Cody CASAZZA, a 2011 Jefferson graduate, is now running things. He's a hard-nosed, strong guy, so it's no surprise that's the identity he wants his Jayhawks to have, and he wants them to be a run-first team, unlike last year when they were a pass-first team with all-conference quarterback Sebastian Bracious. Bracious is back, and he'll still be a threat, but CASAZZA likes to keep the ball on the ground.
The identity we want to have is we really want to be a tough, smart, physical football team. Kind of getting back to the roots of what Jefferson is, and every time Jefferson's been successful, that's kind of been that identity. Tough, hard-nosed kids is what we have. They come here, they work hard, they're willing to do that. So our running attack is going to be a big focus this year.
All right, Tim joins us once again. I feel like he has a lot to say.
Yeah, well, Guilford made big strides last season. Are they Vikings a one-hit wonder, or are they here to stay as contenders?
I think they're here to stay. They showed last year, they can compete in the conference, and they can compete, pretty much with anybody in the conference. And I think Guilford's going to be around for quite some time. They made some strides last year. They bring a lot of key players back. They bring Wolf back. That's all they need to do is Wolf just goes out and he's that point guard for that offense, and then the other players step up. I think Guilford's going to be a top 5 team this year.
All right, and how about Hononegah? They're loaded with talent. What do you believe the Indians' biggest strength will be and their biggest key to this season?
I think their biggest strength is going to be, obviously they bring Huey back and you bring your quarterback back in Warren. I think that's going to be the bread and butter of their offense. I think, defensively, I think they need to improve in that realm there. Last year I thought that was their Achilles heel. But, they bring, Huey and Warren back. I mean, these are going to be 2 exciting players that we're going to be talking about all season.
Harlem's confidence very high after what they did in the playoffs last year. Same as with Hononegah there. What's the Huskies' biggest strength and what's their key?
I think their biggest strengths, anytime you bring a running back like Muhammad back, I mean, this kid can make you miss in a phone booth. I mean, this kid's no joke. I mean, he's really special. As you see here in the clip here, I mean, he can go east and west, get north and south, whatever you need him to do, he'll do it. I think, one thing that they probably need to work on is just creating an identity right away in week 1 and then being able to sustain that identity throughout the actual 9 weeks of the season.
Real quick, who's going to win it this year?
I'm going with the Titans.
Going with the Titans? You
they're
nailed
loaded.
it last year.
They're loaded. They're loaded. This is my unbiased opinion. I mean, I think they're going to be a crew to reckon with this year.
All right.
We're going to be right back. We'll take a quick break.
Now, Regan and I are going to offer up our Nick 10 predictions, and we're also going to include our Nick 10 player watch list. We're going to put all that on our website and digital media. It'll be there first thing tomorrow morning.
And be sure to join us back here next Friday night for Week 1 highlights.
Have a great night, everybody.